Guys, welcome back to Rodder's Garage. I just set up the chassis on some jack stands for the 1928 Dodge Roadster that we just took apart a video or two ago. And I'm about to start redoing this entire chassis. In the last video, we looked at a few things that were pretty sketchy on here, and to be totally honest with you, it's kind of a complete abomination of a frame, and pretty much everything needs to be redone on it. So let me show you a few things, and then we're gonna start trying to revitalize this thing and make it look a little bit nicer, and most importantly, make it safe, because it's not really too safe right now. All right, so in the teardown video, I know I was talking a little bit about the boxing plates on here, and they're sketchy. They're not done right. As you can see, the plates were overlapping big time. Here's how far the plate was hanging over, and they basically left the weld on the surface like this and didn't grind anything. Now, I want to make all that look really nice. There's no sense in leaving it like that, so we're going to buff all this off. Unfortunately, when I grind all this weld off, that means the boxing plates technically aren't welded on at that point, because all the weld is on the bottom surface, and with stuff like this going on, I'm really not going to believe that they achieved any amount of penetration on these boxing plates. So technically, I am going to be grinding all of the welds off the boxing plates, then back gouge everything again, re-weld everything, and grind it again. So basically, I'm kind of like boxing this thing twice. And some other simple cosmetic stuff like back here around this cross member. We're gonna get rid of these gussets, finish plating this in, weld this all up. We're gonna try to make this look a little bit better and chase some welds. All of these welds back here that look like that, we will be pretty much re-welding everything that has a weld on it on this thing. Pretty simple and straightforward, I guess, on the back. And then obviously the number one thing, this front suspension is totally botched up. This looks awfully like this, doesn't it? That's because it is. That's what they did. Whoever put this in totally screwed up the program, used the measurements for the rack, because these are dead in line with the steering rack, used that measurement and placed these lowers here. Then when they figured out they were in the wrong place, they whacked them off with a Sawzall or grinder, put them out here, welded them on like that, basically, and then they had a really lightweight spacer inside of here. Yeah, there's nothing right or good about this entire front suspension kit. Everything is way out of whack. My hats need to come out. I think it was out. I'll have to check that again. They're gonna have to come out like an inch on both sides. We're gonna trim some of this garbage off because obviously they had cut this too deep the first time. You can kind of see here, it's notched out like this, so they figured for this being on the frame rail, figured out that was wrong. That's probably because they did that when they put these in the wrong place. I would say that this distance looks about like this distance here. Now maybe that's a little bit more, but anyway, they totally screwed the whole stinking thing up. So before I even start grinding the boxing plates, I'm gonna go ahead, get the plasma cutter out. We're gonna butcher all this stuff off, throw it in a pile on the side for now, and then totally rebox the rails. Then we'll flip this thing over, rebox the top of the frame, and see if we can salvage this front suspension cradle. That's the game plan. Let's go. this side. Let's see what happens here. So I left off last week on the chassis here, finished all our boxing, got everything ground up, cleaned up the floor, and as you saw at the end there, made a few parts on the lathe. Now I have those parts laid out back here on the chassis. The 4 small ones are actually for the rear suspension, but I do have these 2 bigger ones here, which are replacement pieces for the front cross member, because they butchered those original ones so badly. So let's take one more look at this front cross member, and we're going to cut some brackets off of it, try to repair it, make it correct again, and hopefully salvage what the previous builder pretty much destroyed. So I'm going to basically cut all this stuff off, clean it up so it doesn't look like it was screwed up previously, and we'll weld the holes shut, punch some new holes all the way through so we can slide this in, weld these in, and these actually have to stick out the front, like I believe 5/8 or 3/4. I have another cross member over there we can measure for that, so we make sure we get our geometry right on the spindle when everything gets bolted together. So yeah, let me clean this thing up real quick. I'm also going to cut the brackets off for the steering rack, because because basically two reasons. Number one, they're all bent to heck, and I don't know how or why that would have happened. And the welding. Yeah, pretty much the welds are complete garbage. I'm gonna take those right off. Once they're off, I can straighten these out, fill in these holes from the misinstallment of that lower piece, and we'll put it all back together. And I don't know, I think by the time we're done, I don't think anyone will be able to tell the difference. So let's give it a shot. Let me mount up the grill shell real quick. We'll throw the headers on and we'll take a look at what it's going to look like when it's done, basically. Now we're starting to see what it's going to look like. That's a nice flow to the car, and as you can tell up front, I was just messing around a little bit. Painted myself a piece of cardboard black. I peaked it the first time. I cut the peak back off of it, threw a piece of expanded in just to get some contrast. I would never run that in here, but just to kind of see what it would look like. And this is definitely what's going to end up having to happen to this grill shell. Add a piece of material in the top of it. If the corners were radiused, it'd look even a little bit better, kind of like down there, but we'll match the corner radiuses on it. I'm gonna have to get the radiator out and kind of plan that all around how the radiator fits and all that good stuff too, but it sits better, it looks better. The end of the frame rails, that alone made a huge difference on there. Instead of garbage square tube in the front and those long extensions in the back. Sits nice. I'm happy with it. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for watching. This thing really starting to look nice. Till next time.